It wasn't the accusation that stunned people first. It was the tears. When Toni Braxton, the calm, composed pillar of her family, suddenly appeared overwhelmed, fans immediately sensed that something deeper was happening behind the scenes. Because Toni doesn't unravel publicly. She absorbs. She stabilizes. She protects. So when emotion finally broke through, it didn't feel like drama. It felt like impact. The moment reportedly came after comments from Birdman began circulating, comments that many believe indirectly pointed toward rising tension involving Tamar Braxton. Nothing was confirmed outright. No explosive receipts were dropped. But according to fans piecing together timelines and reactions, something shifted. Because this wasn't loud chaos. It was quiet recognition. Sources claim Birdman suggested that certain narratives may not have unfolded as naturally as the public believed. And if that implication landed the way people think it did, it would mean trust, not just pride, was at stake. So what exactly was said? Why did it hit Toni so hard? And why are fans now questioning whether family loyalty may have complicated the truth? To understand why this moment felt so heavy, you have to understand the weight Toni Braxton has carried for years. Long before any alleged tension between Birdman and Tamar Braxton ever became a topic of conversation, Toni was already navigating pressures most people couldn't imagine. She has spoken openly about the financial strain that followed her second bankruptcy, explaining that it wasn't reckless spending or glamour gone wrong. It was illness. Lupus. A cancelled Las Vegas residency. Insurance that reportedly didn't cover what it was supposed to cover. When a major production shuts down, fans see headlines. They don't see the artist personally covering band salaries, stage production costs, travel, hotel rooms, lighting crews. They don't see the silent math happening behind the scenes. According to Toni's own reflections, when the show stops, the bills don't. And layered on top of that financial pressure was family expectation. She has hinted before that when she first made it, there was an unspoken understanding that success wasn't just hers. It was communal. If she rose, everyone rose. That kind of responsibility sounds beautiful in theory. In reality, it can feel suffocating. Toni once implied that she didn't always feel free to simply live her own life. There were always people depending on her strength. That context matters now because it explains why loyalty is not a casual concept in this family. It's survival. Over the years, the Braxton sisters built a public brand around unity. Even when arguments erupted on television, there was a narrative thread that held steady: family first. Disagreements were framed as emotional, reactive, sometimes messy, but rarely malicious. Fans became accustomed to seeing tension as personality clashes rather than strategic positioning. That's why the recent conversation feels different. When Birdman reportedly began clarifying his side of a past conflict, the tone wasn't explosive. It was measured. He allegedly suggested that certain moments the public witnessed may have been shaped before they unfolded. Not scripted in a literal sense, but influenced. Positioned. Guided toward a particular outcome. He didn't present a stack of evidence in a dramatic reveal. Instead, according to observers, he described a sequence of events that implied forethought rather than spontaneity. That subtle distinction is what unsettled fans. Because if conflict was influenced ahead of time, then the emotional reactions viewers saw weren't the beginning of the story. They were the end result of something already in motion. This is where Tamar's name entered the conversation in a way that surprised people. Birdman allegedly implied that she understood how narratives form, how public sympathy shifts, how optics can define who appears hurt and who appears responsible. He didn't outright accuse her of masterminding anything criminal or malicious. But he did reportedly suggest that she knew more about how events would land than others realized. And that implication alone changed the temperature. For years, Tamar has been viewed as emotionally transparent, reactive, sometimes impulsive. Her critics say she leads with feeling. Her supporters say she leads with honesty. But the idea that she might operate with strategic awareness behind the scenes complicates that image. It suggests calculation layered beneath vulnerability. Whether that suggestion is fair or not remains unproven. But it was enough to trigger speculation. And then came Toni's reaction. Those who watched closely say she didn't interrupt. She didn't immediately defend. She didn't dismiss Birdman as bitter or misinformed. Instead, she appeared overwhelmed. Not theatrically. Quietly. The kind of emotion that surfaces when something you thought was simple becomes layered in real time. Tears don't automatically confirm accusations. But they do signal internal conflict. For Toni, the alleged suggestion wasn't just about Tamar. It was about perspective. If Birdman's version held even partial truth, it would mean Toni may have supported or repeated a narrative without full context. And for someone who has built her identity around being measured and fair, that possibility would sting. Family dynamics are rarely black and white. Loyalty often demands that you choose instinct over investigation. When a sister feels hurt, you defend first and ask questions later. That reflex is protective. But it can also blur details. Fans noticed that Toni didn't rush to clean up the moment publicly afterward. There was no immediate social media statement reaffirming unwavering support. There was no sharp rebuttal. Instead, there was silence. And silence, in situations like this, speaks volumes. It suggests processing. Meanwhile, online discussions intensified. Longtime viewers began revisiting older conflicts involving the sisters and Birdman. They analyzed body language. They replayed interviews. They questioned whether certain disputes escalated unusually fast. Some fans believe they spotted patterns where one person consistently absorbed blame while the broader family narrative remained intact. Others argue that this is overanalysis fueled by hindsight. Still, the timing of Birdman's remarks raised eyebrows. Why speak now? Why revisit past tension after so much quiet? Some speculate that he grew tired of allowing assumptions to stand unchallenged. Others believe external pressures may have pushed the clarification. There is no confirmed motive. Only theories. What complicates matters further is Toni's personal connection to Birdman. Their relationship has endured public scrutiny before. Engagement rumors, breakups, reconciliations. Through it all, Toni typically maintained composure. She rarely dramatized their dynamic. So for his comments to visibly affect her suggests that whatever was said struck deeper than routine gossip. It likely touched on trust. Trust between partners. Trust between siblings. Trust in the version of events she believed to be accurate. If Birdman truly felt misrepresented, and if Tamar genuinely felt wronged, then Toni may have found herself standing between two people she cares about, each holding conflicting truths. That position is exhausting. Especially for someone already carrying health concerns, financial stress, and family expectations. And this is why fans say the tears mattered more than the allegations. Because allegations can be debated. They can be disproven or defended. But emotional reactions reveal something internal shifting. Toni didn't look angry. She looked reflective. As if she was replaying past moments in her mind, recalculating conversations she once thought were straightforward. At this stage, nothing has been legally proven. No official statements have confirmed any scheme. Everything remains in the realm of reported comments and public reaction. Yet the atmosphere feels heavier than previous family disputes. Perhaps because this time, the suggestion wasn't that someone overreacted. It was that someone may have anticipated the reaction before it happened. And if that's even partially true, then the foundation of how this conflict was understood begins to crack. As the conversation continued to ripple outward, what made everything feel even more intense was how specific Birdman allegedly became. He didn't frame the situation as a misunderstanding fueled by emotion. He reportedly described it as positioning. And positioning implies foresight. It suggests that certain conversations happened privately before the public ever saw tension unfold between him and Tamar Braxton. According to the narrative circulating among fans, Birdman claimed there were subtle shifts in tone long before any visible fallout. He allegedly suggested that expectations were quietly planted. That certain grievances were emphasized. That specific reactions were anticipated. None of this has been confirmed with documented proof, but the way he reportedly described the sequence made it sound less like chaos and more like choreography. And that word changed everything. Because if conflict is choreographed, then someone is directing it. Supporters of Tamar immediately pushed back, arguing that she has always been emotionally transparent. They say what people interpret as strategy is simply passion. Tamar has never been known to hide how she feels. When she's hurt, she shows it. When she's frustrated, she says it. For many fans, the idea that she would secretly orchestrate a narrative feels inconsistent with her brand. But critics argue that emotional expression and strategic awareness aren't mutually exclusive. A person can feel deeply and still understand how perception works. Tamar has spent years in reality television. She understands editing, story arcs, public sympathy. That doesn't automatically mean she manipulates situations. But it does mean she knows how moments land. And that nuance is what makes this situation so uncomfortable. What reportedly struck Toni Braxton the hardest wasn't a dramatic accusation. It was the suggestion that she may have unknowingly stood inside a narrative that had already been shaped. Birdman allegedly implied that by the time Toni reacted publicly to certain conflicts, the framework was already in place. That the optics were already leaning in one direction. If that's true, then Toni wasn't just defending her sister. She may have been reinforcing a storyline she didn't realize had layers. Fans watching her response say there was a visible shift in her demeanor when that possibility was laid out. Not outrage. Not denial. Something quieter. The kind of internal recalibration that happens when you're forced to reconsider conversations you once accepted at face value. Online, viewers began dissecting past interviews and episodes, searching for clues. They revisited moments when Tamar appeared hurt and Birdman appeared distant. They replayed scenes where tensions escalated unusually quickly. Some fans now question whether those escalations were purely emotional or influenced by prior discussions. Others argue this is dangerous territory, pointing out that speculation can quickly become unfair judgment. There is still no verified evidence of any plot scheme. Only allegations and reactions. Yet the emotional weight remains. Another factor escalating the tension is timing. Birdman didn't speak at the height of public chaos. He reportedly clarified his position after distance had already formed. That delay made some fans wonder whether he had been holding on to frustration for a long time. When someone waits before speaking, it can signal two very different things. Either they were calculating their moment, or they were trying to avoid conflict until silence became unbearable. According to observers, his tone didn't come across as explosive. It came across as tired. As if he was correcting a narrative rather than attacking a person. That distinction matters. Because exhaustion reads differently than revenge. Meanwhile, Tamar has not publicly delivered a detailed counter-response addressing every point. That absence has fueled even more speculation. Silence can mean strategy. It can also mean disbelief, or legal caution, or simply emotional fatigue. Without direct clarification, fans fill in the blanks. And in the middle of that uncertainty stands Toni. Her position is uniquely fragile. She is not just Tamar's sister. She is Birdman's partner. That dual loyalty creates a tension most people never have to navigate publicly. If she defends Tamar too aggressively, she risks undermining Birdman. If she defends Birdman too firmly, she risks fracturing family trust. That balancing act would be overwhelming for anyone. Add in her health history and financial pressures she has openly discussed in the past, and the emotional load becomes even heavier. Some fans believe Toni's tears were not about believing Birdman over Tamar. They believe it was about realizing she might have been shielded from certain truths. That perhaps she trusted both sides so completely that she never imagined they could be misaligned. There's also a deeper layer emerging in fan conversations. Many are questioning long-standing family dynamics. They're asking whether conflict within the Braxton circle has historically been redirected in ways that protect the collective image. Whether one person sometimes absorbs blame so the broader brand remains intact. That theory is controversial and unproven. But it's gaining traction because of how carefully Toni handled the moment. She didn't publicly dismantle Birdman's claims. She didn't rush to portray Tamar as misunderstood. She stepped back. And stepping back is not something audiences are used to seeing from her in moments of family tension. Usually, she stabilizes. She reassures. She smooths edges. This time, she appeared to withdraw. That withdrawal feels significant. It suggests that whatever Birdman laid out may have introduced information Toni hadn't previously considered. Or at least forced her to examine events from a new angle. When you see someone known for composure struggle to maintain it, you know the conversation has crossed into deeper territory. At this point, the public discourse isn't centered on proving a scheme. It's centered on interpreting reactions. Birdman's detailed framing. Tamar's relative quiet. Toni's visible emotion. Each piece alone might not feel explosive. Together, they create a pattern that fans find hard to ignore. There's also the broader issue of perception in celebrity relationships. Once an audience suspects that narratives can be shaped behind the scenes, every future interaction is scrutinized differently. Innocent gestures become analyzed. Casual comments become clues. Trust between public figures and their audience subtly shifts. For the Braxton family, whose brand has always leaned on authenticity and emotional transparency, that shift could be consequential. If fans begin to believe that certain conflicts were influenced strategically, it challenges the foundation of how their story has been consumed for years. Still, it's important to remember that allegations are not verdicts. Birdman's claims remain his perspective. Tamar's full perspective has not been publicly detailed in response to each point. And Toni's tears, while powerful, do not confirm wrongdoing. They confirm impact. But impact can be just as telling as evidence. Right now, what feels undeniable is that something in the dynamic has changed. Whether that change leads to clarification, reconciliation, or deeper distance remains to be seen. What's clear is that the emotional equilibrium within this triangle has shifted. And once equilibrium shifts, returning to what felt normal before becomes almost impossible. By the time the dust began to settle publicly, the real shift wasn't in headlines. It was in energy. Something about the way Toni Braxton moved afterward felt different. Subtler. more guarded. And when someone who has built an entire career on emotional control suddenly becomes visibly careful, people notice. In the days following Birdman's alleged clarification, fans weren't looking for dramatic statements anymore. They were watching patterns. Did Toni appear alongside him publicly? Did she reference family in interviews? Did she subtly distance herself from certain conversations? Every gesture became data. What stood out most was restraint. Toni did not launch into a public defense campaign. She didn't issue a strongly worded denial. She didn't aggressively shut down speculation. Instead, she appeared to pause. And pauses, especially from someone known for composure, often signal internal processing rather than external damage control. For many fans, that restraint felt heavier than any statement could have. Meanwhile, Tamar Braxton maintained her usual mix of confidence and emotional transparency in other areas of her life, but notably avoided diving deeply into the specific accusations being dissected online. That selective silence created even more tension. Because when public figures choose not to address something directly, the vacuum fills quickly. Supporters argue Tamar has no obligation to respond to every circulating claim. They say constantly defending yourself against speculation only legitimizes it. But critics counter that silence in moments like this can feel strategic. Not necessarily guilty, but intentional. And intention is the word that keeps echoing through this entire situation. If Birdman's framing suggested intentional positioning, then the fallout suggests intentional distance. Relationships do not fracture loudly at first. They shift subtly. Conversations become shorter. Public unity becomes less visible. Shared appearances decrease. Fans begin to sense emotional recalibration before anyone confirms it. Sources close to the broader circle reportedly suggest that Toni has been re-evaluating how much emotional responsibility she carries within her family dynamic. That re-evaluation didn't begin with this moment. It may have been building quietly for years. Health struggles, financial pressures, the weight of being the eldest, the stabilizer, the brand anchor, all of it compounds. When she previously spoke about lupus and the financial strain of her cancelled Las Vegas residency, it revealed a vulnerability many fans hadn't fully grasped. Touring is expensive. Production costs are massive. Insurance complications can devastate even successful artists. And through all of that, Toni has historically still shown up for family. If Birdman's alleged comments introduced even the possibility that she had unknowingly reinforced a narrative that wasn't fully transparent, that realization could feel deeply personal. Not because she chose sides, but because she may feel she didn't see the full picture. The emotional consequences of that are complex. Trust inside family operates differently than trust in business. You don't interrogate every detail. You assume alignment. You assume shared intention. So when alignment is questioned publicly, the damage isn't just reputational. It's relational. Fans are now debating whether this moment marks a long-term shift in how Toni engages publicly with family conflicts. Some believe she will become more neutral, less reactive. Others think she may distance herself from situations that require her to absorb emotional fallout. There's also the impact on her relationship with Birdman. Public controversy can either strengthen bonds or quietly strain them. If Toni believes his timing complicated an already sensitive dynamic, that could create tension. But if she feels he was clarifying a narrative that affected him unfairly, that could deepen loyalty. Without direct confirmation from either side, everything remains layered in interpretation. What feels undeniable is the shift in public perception. Before this, many fans viewed Braxton family conflicts as emotionally messy, but ultimately rooted in love. Now, some are questioning whether strategy ever played a role. That suspicion alone changes how future disagreements will be received. It also affects brand trust. The Braxton name has long represented resilience, sisterhood, and transparency. If audiences begin to suspect unseen positioning behind certain conflicts, engagement may become more cautious. Viewers may watch with curiosity rather than empathy. That subtle shift can influence everything from ratings to endorsement dynamics. At the same time, controversy fuels attention. Streams increase. Discussions trend. Emotional moments circulate widely. The paradox of celebrity culture is that vulnerability can both humanize and destabilize at the same time. For Tamar, this moment could become either a narrative hurdle or an opportunity for deeper clarification. If she eventually addresses the accusations directly, framing her perspective thoughtfully, she could reshape perception. If she maintains distance, speculation may linger longer than intended. For Birdman, the risk lies in perception of motive. Even if his intention was correction rather than exposure, critics may interpret timing as strategic. In high-profile relationships, even truth can feel tactical depending on when it's revealed. But perhaps the most profound consequence rests with Toni. Her tears did something no accusation alone could do. They made people pause. They humanized the weight of being caught between romantic loyalty and sibling loyalty. They revealed that strength has limits. And that realization resonates deeply with audiences who see themselves in that tension. In many ways, this moment may redefine her public role. Not as the unwavering stabilizer, but as a woman navigating complicated dynamics in real time. That vulnerability could strengthen her connection with fans who appreciate authenticity over perfection. Still, unresolved tension lingers. No definitive statements have closed the loop. No unified front has emerged to reset the narrative. And sometimes, absence speaks louder than resolution. The question now is whether this fracture will quietly mend behind closed doors, or continue to widen subtly over time. Family dynamics rarely explode overnight. They evolve through accumulated moments like this. What makes this situation particularly powerful is that it challenges the idea of clean heroes and villains. No one has been definitively proven right or wrong. Instead, the public is left observing emotion, timing, and distance. And sometimes, that ambiguity is more destabilizing than certainty. Because certainty allows closure. Ambiguity sustains conversation. As fans continue to analyze interviews, body language, and social media cues, the larger issue remains unresolved. Was this a painful misunderstanding amplified by perception? Or did it expose a deeper pattern that had simply gone unnamed? Until someone provides clarity, interpretation will continue shaping the narrative. And in the world of celebrity families, perception often becomes its own truth. What began as alleged positioning has evolved into something heavier, a recalibration of trust. Not just between partners or sisters, but between public figures and the audience who feels invested in their story. Toni's tears may fade from headlines, but the questions they raised won't disappear as quickly. Because when strength falters publicly, it signals that something meaningful shifted privately. And once that shift happens, nothing returns exactly to what it was before. So now the question is bigger than headlines. Do you think Toni Braxton was blindsided? Or was this tension building quietly for years? Was Birdman simply clarifying his side of the story? Or did his timing complicate an already fragile family dynamic? And where does that leave Tamar Braxton in all of this? I want to hear your perspective. Because this isn't just about celebrity drama, it's about loyalty, perception, and what happens when private dynamics collide with public narratives. When you're caught between love and blood, who do you protect first? And is silence sometimes louder than any statement? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a real conversation about accountability, boundaries, and family pressure in the spotlight. If you appreciate deep dives that go beyond surface-level gossip and really unpack the layers behind these stories, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because when the next chapter unfolds, and trust me, it always does, you'll want to be here for it.